Okay, Sion Roy, disappear. There you are.
All right, how's it going, guys?
Congratulations.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations, father of a new 5-year-old.
Thank you. A lot of exciting stuff. We started kindergarten this week and a fifth birthday, and so it was a exciting last week.
All right. Well, we're in the middle of all kinds of excitement ourselves over here at SMER, boy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it's a exciting election campaign. You got one on your hands. So, sorry, I'm gonna be the moderator. I'm gonna ask you a couple. First of all, tell folks the state of the race here. How many candidates are running? How many incumbents? What the sort of are there any incumbents not running, etc.? I know the answers, but not everybody will.
Sure. And Luis is on here, and so Luis, the president of our board right now, is not running for re-election. Hi, Luis. So there's going to be 4 spots up for re-election, and 3 incumbents are running: me, Nancy Greenstein, and Barry Snell. And then we're running on a slate with Tom Peters, who you guys interviewed yesterday, who is a retired professor from SMC, a great candidate. And then there's a 5th candidate, a gentleman named Patrick Acosta, who had run in 2016 as well. And from what I understand, is going to be running as part of the change slate. I don't know much more about his candidacy other than that.
All right, so it's been a pretty crazy couple of years, hasn't it? How's SMC doing in light of all that's gone down?
So thank you for asking that. So we're, it's been a challenging, 2 to 3 years for everybody, obviously, but particularly from an education deployment standpoint. I've been really proud of how we've handled the pandemic. We've certainly, as a board, administration, faculty, and staff, put the health and safety of our students and faculty and staff first. And so that's been priority number 1 throughout the pandemic. And that's not the case for every single institution throughout the country. And so I feel proud that we did that. The other thing is, as a trustee, I think our number 1 most important job is the relationship with the president. The president is there to really conduct the large and small business and handle the college and administrate. And we had the perfect president for the job over the last 3 years. Catherine is a perfect president for crises. Calm, weathers the storm, keeps looking forward through that storm. And so I think that from a college standpoint, Catherine was a real benefit, Dr. Jeffrey. And so very positively, we are following the data. So we are, the majority of our classes this fall will be back on campus. So 51% back on campus, 49% will be online versus hybrid. And then, we were following the data, the vaccination requirement that we had in place for the last year. We're scaling back on that. Following the data, it also, we saw that it was a barrier to some students having access to class. And so we've scaled back on that. And, depending on what happens with the pandemic, obviously we have the ability to reinstitute a measure like that as well. But, I'm very optimistic we're coming out of the pandemic, and SMC is getting back on ground and, providing getting back to traditional access to education.
What are the big lessons that you've learned, and how, for example, has it affected your judgments about what priorities there should be in the bond you're placing before voters?
So the bond will be, up in November, and I'm strongly supportive of the bond. The pandemic, we have buildings on campus that have been there since the temporary buildings on campus that have been there since the '94 earthquake. And as we sort of, the pandemic has, rightfully impacted the way we envision our college, and we have a couple of new buildings, and we have a really beautiful new parts of our campus, but we have older parts of our campus that don't provide adequate access to classrooms and education. And so we need to revitalize those. And that was the case, before the pandemic. But I think the pandemic, as we drew away from the college, has caused us to sort of envision the final steps in recreating the campus as a newer campus. The most exciting thing in our bond for me is the housing aspect. I think it's something that, I've been clear about in my campaigns in 2016, 2018. It's something that on our Bundy campus, I would really like us to look into and hopefully build housing that is accessible for, in my opinion, not just potentially successful for our students with housing insecurity, homeless students, et cetera, but we could look into if there's accessibility for faculty and staff who have housing insecurity. And so depending on what we're able to build and fund, but I'm very excited that for the first time, this is included in this bond, that we're going to be looking into this in a really practical way. And so I'm excited about that.
So there are affordable housing measures on the ballot in Santa Monica and LA. Any chance, if those measures pass, any chance of collaboration?
Yeah, I hope to. I've talked to Don about that, and so would love to do that. In terms of the funding, would love to combine public and private funding for affordable housing on campus. And I honestly, to even envision, helping provide, from a public standpoint, provide housing that's not even necessarily on campus. So for example, me and Don and some others have discussed, would right across Bundy and West LA, could we do some sort of a mixed project with mixed funding? And so those are things that I'm very open to and would be enthusiastic about, putting different pieces of funding together, just to have accessible housing for the students, faculty, and staff that need it.
Okay, I'll ask one more question, and then we'll see if people in the audience have a question. What do we do to get kids, students back? I probably shouldn't call them kids anymore. They're almost adults by the time they go to college, right? How do we get them back in the classroom after the 2 years of travail they've been through? Are we seeing the students are eager to come back, and so you're really filling up your classes, or are we seeing that people are reluctant to come back, be afraid of COVID still, maybe just got out of the habit?
So our enrollment, as has been the case across educational institutions across the country, has declined over the last couple of years, impacted by COVID. We've also had declining enrollment impacted by, immigration policies from the Trump administration. And so those two things have impacted our enrollment at our college. I do think that the surveys show that students are eager to get back on campus. Most students are eager to get back in person on campus. But what I've mentioned to our administration on a number of times is being cognizant that the hybrid part of it and may offer accessibility to certain students, not just in the classroom, but for clubs, et cetera. Some people may prefer that, may thrive on that accessibility versus just purely in classroom. And so I think it'll be an evolution going forward, where, I think the majority of what we do will be in person, but I would hate to go back to pre-pandemic where there was zero hybrid or Zoom accessibility. I think that we have to look into how to sort of optimize both for the needs of our students. But surveys show that most of the students do want to get back on campus.
Okay, so let's see if there are people in our audience who have questions for you before. This was scheduled to be 15 minutes. We got started just a little bit late, so we have about 5 minutes left, I think. Does the coordinator agree with that? Okay, so I can't see people's hands. If anybody's got a hand up, I can't tell.
I don't see any hands up at this time. Oh yes, Phyllis has her hand up.
Have at it, Phyllis.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
She's
get my
unmuting.
sound.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm not real familiar with this myself, but I have heard from residents that there are some concerns. I wonder if you could explain so we can understand, because this is going to come up and come back regarding this bond issue about this $20 million that was supposed to be used for a park development that has not occurred. And are you familiar with that? That was not in this bond, it was in the last one. And so
dollars with the park development, I would have to, I'm not
Yeah.
familiar with that, so.
because that's
I'd have to look at-
definitely, that's going to be coming up, that they're saying, well, you know, they haven't come through with this, so why do they need more money, blah, 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 that sort of thing. And also I would like to know if whatever units you build for homeless housing, which I'm totally in favor of, oh, I shouldn't say that, maybe, but I'm wondering if those would count toward our Reno numbers in Santa Monica.
Count towards our numbers in terms of,
Yeah, the answer to that, I think, is yes.
Okay,
Is if they're built in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
Now, part of the college's land area, like the Bundy campus, is actually in LA. But if
Mhm.
anything that's built in Santa Monica would count toward our Reno numbers, no matter who built it.
do you have any idea how many units you were thinking about, or?
this is
Is
gonna
that-
be a feasibility project that's what's in this bond is
Mhm.
looking at feasibility. And so assessing what is feasible on that campus and what we can, what we can fund and do. So not yet. Just to be clear, the funding to actually build housing is not in this bond. It's
Oh.
to look into the feasibility.
Mm,
Okay, Denny, just so you know, we do have a tight schedule of the following interviews, kind of one after the next. So,
Let's have Tony and Mike Feinstein ask questions, and then we'll be done.
Hello, Shine.
Hey, Tony, how's it going?
Good, good. How you doing?
Good, good.
Yesterday, who was Barry, one of your colleagues, mentioned that he was interested in prioritizing with this construction, especially when you're looking at the housing for students and workforce, I guess, to look at prioritizing the folks in the Pico neighborhood, the students that you might have coming on campus. Are you on board with that?
Absolutely. I think that prioritizing students that come from places that that face housing insecurity, et cetera, and prioritizing local students, particularly that come from the district, whether it's Pico neighborhood or other places in Santa Monica, absolutely. But I think that it's something that we can help in terms of providing a resource for local students to use. But I also, I think that this could be a potential project even for a small number for faculty and staff. So most of our faculty and staff can't afford to live in Santa Monica. And so is there a way to provide a small section of housing for folks that, whether they face housing insecurity or just so more of our faculty and staff have an option to live closer to campus or on campus. I think it's something, these are the kinds of things that we need to look into going forward.
Okay, and Mike Feinstein, last question.
Just very briefly, I want to express my hope that the housing across from Airport Park is architecturally dynamic, because I believe that there's going to be a conflict between wanting to maximize the number of units because of the social need and the ability not to have a big boxy building. But because we're going to have this park there that's going to have tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people for the next 100 years, I hope that all of you do your best to make sure the building is articulated, interesting, and not just a big box.
Thanks for your comments, Mike.
I think
If I'm known for
that-
anything, Mike, it's for inventive architecture.
That makes me feel great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shai. You're